Proper story's supposed to start at the beginning. Ain't so simple with this one. Now here's a kid whose whole world got all twisted, leaving him stranded on a rock in the sky. He gets up. Ground forms up under his feet as it pointing the way. He don't stop to wonder why. Finds his lifelong friend just lying in the road. Ain't a gift from the gods, but it'll have to do.
Before Transistor, Pyre, and Hades, Supergiant Games was a small team working out of a house in San Jose, California, back when Skype was the platform for online communication, and its biggest competition was Mumble. And despite this being their debut title, it had such a positive reception that when they showed it off at PAX Prime, their future publisher, Warner Brothers Games, came to them. Back then, if your idea was good enough, you didn't even need a design doc or to offer the blood of your firstborn child to get a deal with a publisher. And it is my sincerest wish that the next video game crash, which will break the backs of all AAA companies, will come swiftly and without mercy. But today, I'm talking about Bastion, an action RPG developed in 2011 for Xbox Arcade and Windows. Mechanically, it wasn't the most out there idea for a game, but it served as a jumping off point for Supergiant's entire line of games, both mechanically and narratively. But before I go any further, let's start from the top. And don't let the title screen fool you. Despite the calm tone and guitar strings, the story hits the ground running. The world is over. The calamity swept all over Caelondia, uprooting the land and turning it into these floating islands that litter the sky. It was only yesterday you were working at the city's border. Life wasn't exactly great before, but now everything's gone. With the city crest to guide your way, and a hammer to defend yourself, you make your way to Caelondia's emergency shelter, the Bastion. But the only one who made it was a man named Rux, and he has an uncanny amount of knowledge about the Bastion. He tells you that we need cores to keep this place running, like the one you picked up on your way here. We have a goal. Search the ruins of Caelondia for more cores, and hopefully someone else is out there. So just like that, the intro ends, and Bastion begins. Being a Supergiant game, even from 2011, I'm happy to report that the art direction is still gorgeous. The Kales were masons, hunters, scientists, and navigators, everything you need to carve out a brave new world. As such, Caelondia is a pretty colorful place, from the variety of reds and browns on the rippling walls, to the greens of the wild outskirts, even the ashy charred grounds of Culford Cauldron. Caelondia is characterized by warmer colors and earthy tones, just like the two Kales relevant to this story, Rux and our nameless kid. This is to such a degree that most of the enemies usually have cooler colors. Windbags and turrets are primarily blue with orange accents, and some of the flora and fauna have blue bodies. And when you get to the final area of the game, you get it. This also includes another survivor, Zulf, an ambassador of the Ura, a race of people who live in a series of subterranean passages called the Tazzle Terminals. They're also a group that the Kales have gone to war with in the past. But Zulf had a wife from Caelondia before the calamity, and just like Rux says, we have nothing to worry about. Now this isn't a hard rule. Bastion likes to use the complementary pair of blue and orange to emphasize things, like highlighting danger or simply making the UI more noticeable. Because everything is so packed, I could imagine a world where this game is a visual mess. Thankfully, this isn't the case. They even made the void around you feel less empty. The blur, the various weather effects, it's simple, but it does enough to make it not feel, well, like a void. I do have two small issues with the visuals, the screen shake and the use of bloom. Yeah, that's it. Now, let's talk characters. The kid himself was a bit jarring at first, being the only named character in 3D, and his walk cycle is a bit stilted in combat. The normal run is fine, but if you attack then try to walk, it's like he's doing his best to hold one in. This is more of a nitpick because we never really have time to notice this stuff in the middle of a fight. I just wanted to point it out because it looks kind of funny. While many games use the silent protagonist as a stand-in, the kid is his own character, but there's little in the way of actual visuals that help reinforce that. At least nothing worth talking about here, and it's usually up to Rux to put the kid's personality in writing, so to speak. He's not silent because he's a player insert, it's because he's antisocial and going to school was like trying to fight the NWO.
Fight back!
The actual sound effects are pretty stock, as in they're all probably from a sound effects pack from movies or television. This is pragmatic sound design. But about the music, Bastion can be a very somber game at times. Many of the residents are gone, and almost everything is being swallowed up by the earth. But for half of the game, the tone most tracks carry isn't sadness or nihilistic indifference. Western electric strings, percussive beats all boom, and some Eastern instruments are snuck in there too. Despite this being a post-apocalyptic setting, the world still has so much life in it. There's a certain energy to the tracks, like the instruments are echoing in defiance of this tragedy. The calamity turns Caelondia into a Western.
It's a troublesome scene to be sure.
Darren Korb literally made this soundtrack in the closet of his New York apartment, using samples, presets, and plugins from Logic Pro. He did so much with so little, and it turned out amazing, easily making it one of my top 5 soundtracks of all time. Despite having a background in music, Darren Korb didn't actually start with video games, and the music was actually developed early to establish the tone, even before working on the art.
And that was like kind of something that ended up following us through all these projects where like the music is often the first expression of the tone and stuff that we end up using.
The idea was, what if Cormac McCarthy made a fantasy video game? This idea of a ruined frontier being the kind of tone some of the tracks took also explains the less upbeat tracks. The game does well to remind us how everyone is processing all of this. Completing a level leaves things more bittersweet than outright triumphant. The tone shifts, but the instrumentation is similar, if you can believe that. But the thing that everyone remembers when they play Bastion isn't just the music, but the vocals as well. Bastion's crown jewel and narrator, Rux. He's one of the first things you hear as you wake up in the Calamity, and he sticks with you.
The old world's finished, but the new world's just getting started.
I'll never get tired of hearing that man talk. What makes Rux work as a narrator? The buttery smooth voice talent definitely helps, but I'm more of a sucker for the smaller things. Rux not only comments on the events of the main story, but also reacts. From the more noticeable, like when you struggled or breezed through a set-piece encounter.
Know how many times kid nearly fell off the barge back there? Not even once.
To the more subtle, like interacting with things in the Bastion.
Turn 'em round and round all you like. Pith's still gonna be ugly.
The writing paired with Logan Cunningham's amazing delivery really sells the fiction. Logan Cunningham really is one of those guys with a golden voice. He's right up there with Wayne June when it comes to indie game narration, and with how involved he is with their future games, it's not an over-exaggeration to say that he's synonymous with Supergiant Games, a real standout aspect in any game he's in, and it all started here, with Rux. Moving on to gameplay, your goal is to get more cores for the Bastion, which leads to the various buildings that'll provide you with a specific commodity. The armory lets you choose 2 weapons and a skill for your loadout. The forge lets you upgrade said weapons if you have the right materials, and the distillery lets you equip spirits that give you buffs. With the amount of drinks you can equip increases every time you level up. There are 6 buildings in total, and they can be upgraded over the course of the game as you get more cores. The buildings are where all of the action RPG elements coalesce. You can upgrade materials and level up in the field, and you get new abilities and items by going to the various buildings. So, should you comb through the levels looking for every single story item and upgrade? Well, there's a building for that too. While it's good to search for things just to hear what Rux has to say in the moment, Bastion isn't the kind of game to pressure you into becoming a sweat, because that's what the shrine is for. Make enemies stronger, make them hit harder, give them the martyrdom perk from COD. While you do get more currency, these are more to challenge you in subsequent playthroughs after you get a full arsenal. But enough about the upgrades, what about the kid himself? His movement is slow, but with a lack of guardrails in some places and with how narrow some of these paths can be, it's probably for the best. So, for repositioning or just better movement, you use your roll. It has a low recovery, goes a pretty far distance, and you can change your direction mid-roll. The only thing it's lacking is iframes, but that's what the shield is for. You can block melee enemies, projectiles, and if you pull it out at the right time, you can deflect damage back at your aggressor. It's one of your best defense options, and it doubles as your lock-on. That's convenient. But the real star of the gameplay is obviously obviously, the weapons. Melee weapons, long-range weapons, AoE weapons, racist weapons. There are 11 weapons in total, and while they're still fun to use, most of them feel like they serve a very similar purpose. Case in point, there's a power shot mechanic that involves firing just before a full charge to do more damage. It makes the weapons feel punchy, and the feedback makes it satisfying to pull off, especially when you get upgrades to make the charge time faster. It's such a fun mechanic that not only is it in a third of the kid's arsenal, but I think it's been in every Supergiant game since. There are still slight nuances between all the weapons that share that mechanic, like with the weapon skills, making certain close-range weapons better at crowd control or doubling down on their specific single target damage. It's just that their niche thing is tied to a limited resource. So again, most of these weapons fulfill a similar purpose, like the bow and the carbine being long-range weapons with a power shot, or the repeater and the dual pistols being high magazine bullet hoses. So it really comes down to what feels best to you, which 90% of the time involves the carbine. My loadout usually is made up of the machete and the bow, because I'm a contrarian. I don't really see the lack of mechanical variety as a huge issue when it comes to the kid's arsenal, and despite the overlap, I remember all of them, all because of the world building and flavor text from Rux. There's history behind them, and it's more than just a line or two from the weapon's description. Rux literally comments on which weapon pair you have when you leave the arsenal.
A repeater goes with a hammer better than a box of nails.
So when the Ceylandian man is speaking, I sit and listen. I remember back in school people would debate if a game was good based on presentation or mechanics, like one was more important than the other. A supposed silver bullet that would quash all discussion. Context be damned. I'm here to say it's whatever sucks you into the world, the things that make it all feel real to you, even for a second. The last thing to talk about would be the story. If anything that I said got you interested in Bastion, and you don't want to get spoiled, then go to here. There was one more survivor. We find a young girl named Zia singing alone among the rubble. Zia's song is an interesting one, a folk song that expresses the Ura's grievances with Ceylandia. However, despite the lyrics being rather pointed, you get the impression that it's not a reflection of her views per se. With Zia being so young, maybe it's the only song she knows. Her folks come from the Tassel Terminals, but she was born in the city. Her design reflects this, with her being covered in blue. And while it's not a red scarf, the pink around her neck reminds me of the other Kales in our group. Zia carries a journal belonging to her late father, written in the Ura's language. Zia was raised in the city, and Rux only has a basic understanding of the Ura's language, so the job of translating falls to Zulf. Unfortunately, Zulf learned way more than he probably should have. It's been established that the Ceylandians and the Ura have a bit of a turbulent relationship. They worship the same gods, but where the Ura revere the pantheon, the Ceylandians sell god-themed merch like they're Disney. The Ceylandians are technologically advanced, but only thanks to the land that they acquired from the Ura. And finally, Point Lemaine's Grand Rail, Ceylandia's central trade route, and the very place that started the Ura-Ceylandian War. Was it built on hollowed ground? Did it trample on the homes of the Ura? Either way, it's heavily implied that the land didn't belong to the Kales when they built the rail, and reasonably, the Ura crashed the out. But because Ceylandia was more technologically advanced, the war ended, and the Ura retreated eastward. To the Ura, the war was over, but Ceylandia had other ideas. The rippling walls helped keep out anything outright hostile to the city, wildlife, the elements, and potentially the Ura. Ura refugees were allowed to enter the city, with the condition that they could never return home. Even 50 years after the war, the Ura living in the city were all ostracized and discriminated against. Turns out, Rux was full of shit. And finally, the Calamity. The journal reveals that it wasn't an accident or some force of nature, but orchestrated by a group of Ceylandia's finest minds, the Mancers. It was a preemptive measure to prevent another war from ever happening, Ceylandia's final solution. The Kales went to war with the Ura, and when they won, they decided to drop the proverbial nuke while under a peace treaty. Horrified at the Mancers' intentions, it was sabotaged by an Ura scientist working with the Mancers, and one of the key contributors to the Calamity's creation, Zia's father. He set it to blow in the Kales' faces, instead of targeting the Tassel Terminal. Too bad he had to pull the trigger himself. And that leads us to now. Zulf, having lost his wife to the Calamity, desecrates the Bastion's monument before storming off, saying, "The Calamity failed. I will not." And he returned with the Ura. Buildings are smashed, and the invaders are planting mysterious rocks into the Bastion that grow into these violent spires. When the dust clears and the fighting stops, Rux tells us how to repair the Bastion. by finding more shards. And lucky for us, Zulf is going out of his way to hide them from us, so we have an excuse to go after him. Eventually, we make our way to the Tassel terminals, and we carve a bloody path through the Ura. I love how deeper we go, this warm filter creeps in, making this icy blue interior something more Ceylandian. It's like the damage to the area is wounding the earth, and the calamity is coming to swallow this place whole. The last surviving Ura, having sustained so many losses on their side due to the kid, decided to turn on the man who aggravated him in the first place. With the final shard in hand, we make it back to the Bastion. It turns out, this place wasn't just an emergency shelter. With all the shards collected, we have two options. Use the Bastion to restore things to how they were before the calamity, or to evacuate with the Bastion to explore and live in this ruined world. While the choice itself might not be difficult for the player, given context, there's no clear-cut good or bad answer here. The number of people and animals just trying to survive while we cut them down for their cores. They could all be brought back, or are we just dooming ourselves to relive the same conflict over and over, so we can clear our conscience? And if we go back in time with only fragmented memories, what's stopping the calamity from happening again? So evacuation seems like the better choice, right? Life persists in the wake of the calamity, ecosystems still exist, and people are adapting. But for how long? How much anti-calamity technology is really out there? Outside of the Bastion and the Tassel terminals, who else realistically could have prepared for something like this? How much of the world is still out there? I always felt that Bastion was a story about trauma. We can accept what happened, the people we've hurt, the things we've done, the lives we've lived, and we move on, despite the uncertainty of what comes next, because, well, it's better than living in the past, right? Recommending Bastion to anyone more familiar with Supergiant's catalog can be a bit of a hard sell. If I can generalize here, Pyre has a better narrative, Transistor has the most engaging story, and Hades is the most fun to master. On the outside, you're spoiled for choice when it comes to what most people would consider a better game, but Bastion is still one of my favorite experiences of all time. This isn't something I can really quantify, but here I go. This quaint little game knows how to hit me right in the core of my being. Maybe it's because it just has enough world building to keep things interesting. Maybe it's a combination of Ruck's smoky narration and this memorable soundtrack. I honestly don't know, but I still get lost in its rhythm every time I play it. It's important as the first game in Supergiant's eventual lineup of bangers, the foundation that built up such a legendary studio that started here. And it's important to me because this is the first vibes-based game that can still stir things within me. It's Supergiant's first game, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. I clocked about 5 hours on my current playthrough, and while it's normally $15, I'd honestly just wait for a sale. You know your price points. But for the rest of you, go buy it. Get lost in Derek Korb's sweet tunes, and I'll see you all next time. Take care of yourselves, and have a good one.